Hey guys, welcome to the Mormon News Roundup. Appreciate everybody being here. We're going to have a great episode. If you stay tuned to the very end, we will have a little live stream after it's over. You can join the live stream by joining the link at the bottom of the page. Looking forward to this one. Let's kick this off right away.
Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson. You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup. I'm your humble host, Steve A's, and that's Talent on Loan from Kolob. It's July 28th, 2024. This is episode 124. We've got a big story. We're going to talk about the Mormon Pioneer Day celebration, which is very popular in Utah. We're going to talk about the Olympics and the opening ceremonies and the Mormon Church's involvement with the Olympic Games in Paris. We're going to talk about how Satan has apparently been demoted from LDS theology. And we're going to debut a new segment about how to ask our fabulous co-host, Rebecca Biblioteca, about her advice. Rebecca, how's it going?
It's great. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. We've got a big episode on tap here, and let's just jump right in. It's Pioneer Day, which is the most wonderful time of the year. For those of us who don't live in Utah, I know that you do. Can you explain what is Pioneer Day and what's it all about?
Yeah, it's amazing. Of course, we're celebrating when the pioneers first entered the valley. And yes, I myself, if you just saw that graphic, celebrate Pioneer Day, which is kind of the
what's the difference?
Yeah, what's the difference? I don't know. I was actually reading something where they were saying that's sort of a hate holiday, right? Sort of anti-pioneer. I don't think so. I just think not everybody, has the same thoughts about the pioneers coming, and they want to celebrate in another way, because you do get the day off in lots of cases here in Utah for the 24th of July. So there's a giant parade in Salt Lake. I went for the first time last year. It was really fun, actually. Everybody just celebrates. But what's interesting, and I don't know if you had this when you were growing up, I grew up in Washington State. They had Pioneer Day parades, kind of like around the church building, around the stake center. Various stakes and wards do celebrate it outside of the Morador, I think. Did you ever celebrate Pioneer Day as a kid?
I lived in Utah, so I wouldn't know about the difference between what didn't happen in Utah. But yeah, Pioneer Day is celebrating when the Mormon pioneers came across the plains in the 1840s, early 1850s, and they reenact them with pioneers. Instead of floats, that you have them pulling a handcarts or you have the oxen and things like that. It's a fun way to celebrate the Mormon invasion of Mexico, because it was Mexican territory at the time. It wasn't U.S. territory. It was just illegal immigration into a territory that the Mormons didn't own. But people have kind of made a parody holiday. If you don't want to celebrate the pioneers, because that's colonialism. This was an unoccupied space in Utah. There was 1,500 people, I believe, or so in the Salt Lake Valley from different tribes, from the Shoshones to the Utes to whoever else. We waged war on those individuals as pioneers. So it's kind of a way of, like, we renamed Columbus Day to Indigenous Persons Day. People are renaming Pioneer Day to Pioneer Day. And that's why Culture's got this funny or amusing take here. He says, me rolling up into the word Pioneer Party and realizing that I'd made a huge mistake. Instead of Pioneer Day, it's Pie and Beer Day.
I never thought it was irreverent. I mean, it's just a way for other people to celebrate on the same day. But you're absolutely right about a different take on Pioneer Day, because I also have seen a lot of things on social media where it's more the darker side of colonialism and that's being portrayed. I've seen some people put some posts out about that. So I don't know. It's not clear cut this holiday. And I think we'll see more of that going forward.
Yeah, you got to be careful how you're celebrating when somebody came in and they wiped out an entire, an entire tribe. Those are my ancestors too. So I'm kind of conflicted in it. So I'm not having an equivocation of trying to excuse any of the atrocities the pioneers did. But I want to be able to somehow celebrate my heritage, but at the same time acknowledge the harm that they did. It's a fine line. I don't know how well I thread it. But the church recently has gotten much more involved with it, because they've announced the elder David A. Bednar, Susan's husband, has been named the Grand Marshal for the Days of 47 parade. And let's see what my favorite apostle is up to as far as the Pioneer Day celebration.
Well, across the state this week, Utahns will join in celebrating and honoring the thousands of pioneers who crossed the plains with their wagons to reach Utah in 1847. One key part of the celebration is the Pioneer Day Parade.
This year, Elder David A. Bednar, an apostle of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has been named Grand Marshal. Mike Hedrick sat down with Elder Bednar and his wife, Susan.
For decades, Elder Bednar has traveled with his wife, Susan, around the world as a husband, a father, a teacher, as an apostle of the Savior Jesus Christ. And on the 24th of July, he will hold a title he has never held before, Grand Marshal.
Susan and I are delighted to participate in commemorating the pioneers. We don't really know who we are or where we are unless we know something about where we came from. So to participate in that commemoration for us is a thrill.
The theme for this year's parade, Stout Pioneer Hearts, Lift Others. And Sister Bednar says when lifting others, that stout heart is key.
I think in order to be a pioneer or stand up for something you believe in, you have to be brave.
The present day equivalent of that is I can do hard things. Stout to me suggests strength and stamina and perseverance.
And Elder Bednar has a bloodline of stout pioneer saints, not crossing the plains with handcarts and wagons, but rather starting in England with his great-great-grandfather Luke Cephas and grandmother Christina Long. They sailed to Australia and along the way became friends with a man by the name of Joseph Ridges.
Joseph, as a young man in England, had learned how to build organs, and he fashioned what is believed to be one of the first organs in Australia.
People were fascinated by the sound of the instrument, and shortly after, Joseph Ridges joined the church, brought the organ from Australia to California to Salt Lake City, and set it up in the old Bowery on Temple Square.
Brigham Young heard that organ and invited Joseph Ridges to build the organ that we now have in the tabernacle today. So in a way that my great-great-grandfather never could have known, he was lifting, he was helping, and it has influenced generations of people. So the lifting is done in seemingly small ways that over an extended period of time have an impact none of us can ever really imagine.
Elder and Sister Bednar echo the words of a children's primary song of what it truly means to be a pioneer.
And it goes, you don't have to push a handcart, leave your family dear, or walk 1,000 miles or more to be a pioneer.
Everybody's a pioneer. You don't have to have Latter-day Saint ancestors who crossed the plains to be related to pioneers or to be a pioneer yourself. In some way, some fashion, every single person is a pioneer, blazing a trail that no one in that family has ever blazed before.
And his wife, Susan, it always seems like she's a beloved afterthought. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, I think we've all noticed that. And I noticed that in the signage I think you're going to show later of the float that he was on. So now, did I miss it? His ancestor is not the one that built the organ, right?
No, I think that's what they were saying, is that his ancestor was the one who converted in Australia and then came over and actually helped either built the organ or helped build the organ. So he's got the pioneer bona fides. He's got the connections. There's always a divine connection here between the early people. There's very few apostles or even general authorities at all who are converts. They almost always have a nepotistic connection to early Mormon foundings. Your ancestors built up the trust so that we can trust you as well. And you were talking about the pictures here. Here we have Susan's husband, who's been belovedly nicknamed Susan's husband as kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to, since it's always Susan is always the addendum, and this time we're going to turn it on him and say it's actually Susan's husband. And here we have Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, David A. Bednar of the 12 Apostles, and Susan's not in the picture. She's nowhere to be found. She's not on the signage. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, she isn't there. I know she's in the float because I've seen pictures. I think she's on the other side of him. But yeah, I feel like, wouldn't it have been great if both of them were named as grand marshals since they're going to be riding together? That would have been really positive, I think. But they did not do that. So, but there he is. And of course, I went to the parade for the first time last year. I've never been before. And I remember seeing some state and local officials, politicians, and they're riding in their cars and they're going through. And I didn't really notice any kind of presence of security. I'm sure it was there, but it wasn't overt. When one of the church leaders, and I can't remember which apostle it was, somebody was there representing, there was like a black van following him. There were like 6 security people kind of running alongside. I mean, it was like the Pope was there. And that's when I first learned about the badge that the security was wearing, kind of like a little police badge that has a little angel Moroni on it, which I posted about a lot because I thought that was really different. I was not aware. I knew they had a security force. I knew they trained in a facility. We podcasted about that before, but I didn't realize they had a little badge with a Moroni on it.
Yes, definitely. They are flanked by church security, as this picture shows. You can see these handsome goons here. That's how I refer to them. And they're protecting David A. Bednar and Susan as well. senior leaders of the church, they do get church security, but the lowly average missionaries, they certainly do not. And here's that picture that you posted here on your Facebook page. If you follow Rebecca Biblioteca, you can get some of the best news updates. What are we seeing with this picture here, Rebecca?
Yeah, well, I actually found this on Reddit. Somebody was very observant, and it kind of said, we haven't really come that far, have we? Or maybe we're even regressing, because if you look down at David O. McKay, he was also in a parade. I'm guessing that would have been the 60s. He was my prophet when I was a little kid. But it says President David O. McKay and wife. There is a mention that he does have a better half. There's no mention at all of Susan in the upper picture, not one bit.
We seem to have regressed, because even back in the 1950s, at least we got the token wife mention. But now in 2024, we can't get the token wife mention. The church at least has made some strides with the naming of the mission presidents. They now call them mission leaders, with the president and both the man and the women are co-mission leaders. So at least we've made some progress there, but we have seemed to have taken a step back in the sexism department. It seems like we saw this as well with Elder Eyring's wife when she died. Again, he was named a front and center. We even saw this with Elder Ballard. It always seems like the Mormon apostles' wives are merely an afterthought. And this time, whoops, they forgot her. They didn't even mention her. They didn't even bring her up. At least with David O. McKay, we had and wife at the bottom, which is patronizing, but it still at least acknowledges her existence. Susan has been forever diminished. What do they call it? The doctrine over self. She has no decision-making authority in the church whatsoever, never will. And so much for having more power and authority than any other organization that I'm aware of. Any last thoughts here on the Days of 47 parade? And I didn't bring this up, but I do want to mention it, that Brigham Young actually had a post that I didn't bring up here today. He actually made a mention in the Journal of Discourses mocking other kings of other countries, saying, look, they need security to take them around and they can't freely travel, whereas I am the king of Utah and I need no security whatsoever. Things have been turned on their head for sure.
I would just encourage everybody, if you can, at least once go. Like I said, I've never been. Last year, it was pretty eye-opening. It was very interesting. I would encourage anyone to go at least once.
Yeah, sounds good. Now, our next article here, which is from one of my favorite magazines, which is Latter-day Saint Mag here, has a very interesting take, and they claim that building temples here, you're not going to believe this, how anti-Mormons actually help build temples around the world. This was just released a couple of days ago, which first appeared on Public Square magazine. The church's temples are supposed to serve about 40,000 members of the church each. And they go through the history here of how the church has basically come out in favor in amicus briefs of certain situations here about both of the cake bakers in Colorado and some other situations here where the church has weighed in on temples, including our Lupa, and how actually it's anti-Mormons have been the ones that have paved the way. That's incongruous. What do you think here, Rebecca? Do anti-Mormons help build temples?
Yeah, that article is really interesting. We're debating doing an episode on it because it's just, oh my goodness. Well, and the crux of it is, what they're saying is, of course, RLUIPA is the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Acts, which does give protections to religions so they can't be discriminated against in a town. What they don't talk about is it also gives protections to towns to not have to do something completely radical with their zoning to accommodate a religion or a religious structure. So in this case, I believe what the author is trying to say is that anti-Mormonism, and I assume he's talking about Mormonish and Nemo and Josiah, just those of us that are putting out some things. We are there, aiding residents, putting out content about temples. And so their point of view is that we are inciting anti-Mormon sentiment in these towns. And this is not true. No one has to incite that. The actions of the church do give people pause, but they're saying that by inciting this here in the town, the church can now use RLUIPA and say, look, we're completely being discriminated against. Now, this would be true if the residents in all these towns where they're building temples and Mormonish or some of the other podcasters were holding up signs saying, Mormon, go home. Mormon, we don't want you. No Mormons here. No one has ever said that. No one has ever said that. And they're extremely clear. What they're saying is, please obey the zoning codes. Everyone I have ever talked to in any of these towns would be more than happy to have a temple built in their town. Just please follow the laws of the land. Their argument in the article is not correct because nobody is citing anybody to anti-Mormon sentiment. Now, does that exist? I think what exists is a sentiment saying, why is this large corporation that calls itself a church doing this to us, suing us, everything that they're doing, if you followed all of this stuff. So yeah, the article is really interesting. I see what they're trying to do, but it certainly doesn't hold any water by my perspective.
Okay, let me read just one little part of this for you, because I think that this is certainly, it seems like they're taking issue with Mormonish in particular. Yeah. And it said, a few of these public-facing anti-Mormon agitators have decided to make opposing temple building projects their cause du jour. But since local government leaders can't rule against a church for religious reasons, they can't rely on the animus-based rationale of these anti-Mormon activists in their decision-making. Let me just read one more paragraph. These anti-Mormon platforms will swoop into a local zoning issue and create an alliance with those who oppose a temple proposal for civic reasons such as lighting or traffic concerns. These channels provide a platform for locals to spread their concerns. They recruit opposition from outside the local area.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am really sorry about that. Oh my God, that is absolutely ridiculous. I can show you letter after letter in every single town telling the LDS to show up from hundreds of miles away, wear certain shirts, pack the plaza. Nobody does that. The residents are lucky in each of these towns to be able to get a few people together. Nobody can mobilize at the touch of a button like the LDS. This is absolutely false. And I just have to say, shame on you for even saying that. That's not true. Some of these residents can't even get a seat in these meetings in these different towns because the LDS from 100 miles away have shown up to support their temple. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Let me just read a little bit more to you, and then we'll call it good on this article. It says, those from outside the area have little reason to engage in these local issues other than anti-Mormon animus. And so when they add to the public debate about zoning questions, it often takes the form of accusing the church of being a cult, pedophiles, or non-Christian. Because these accusations are much more emotionally potent than debates about the timing of sidewalk installation. Those who oppose the temple adopt these arguments in their public advocacy.
Yeah, seriously, can we just spend the rest of the podcast talking about that? That is absolutely ridiculous. These anti-Mormon platforms, as they're talking about, and I know they're talking about Nemo and Mormonish. We never swoop into towns. Towns reach out to us and they say, what is happening here? We can't understand. Who are these Mormons? Why are they doing this to our town? What is happening? All we do is try to share information. We try to help them. Everybody works within the laws of the land. Our goal is that the temple can be built. We want the temple to be built. And if the temple would simply comply to each town's various zoning codes, it could be built tomorrow. Ground could be broke tomorrow. We're coming up against this in Fairview, right? And we'll talk about this later. The town council meeting where they're going to vote yes or no on the temple plan on the 6th. If the church were to revise that to be something that fit more into the town there and the environment, they could start building today. Read this article, everybody, if you want to see the kind of somebody just trying to help sentiment that's out there. It's absolutely ridiculous. Everything they describe in this article is actually what the LDS is doing. There is no anti-Mormon sentiment. In fact, most of the people we worked with never knew anything about Mormons before. You know what they say? We do now. We do now.
Let me just give you one last take on this temple things, and we'll wrap it up on this episode. And it's my buddy over there, Ryan Josiah, who runs the absolute best TikTok channel, gives a very interesting take, a little bit of history in temple. Do anti-Mormons help with temple construction? We'll find out. Ryan Josiah has hosted 2 episodes of the Mormon News Roundup. Let's hear what he has to say about temples.
Of the differences and the friction between church presidents Hinkley and Nelson. At General Conference, those two put on a happy face, but they obviously had their differences behind closed doors. Of course, one of the most glaring examples is the word Mormon. Hinkley was the one who said,
Mormon is not a word of disrepute, but it represents the greatest good, that good which is of God.
And then proceeded to spend millions on the I Am a Mormon campaign. But when Nelson became prophet, one of the first things he did was to say,
to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
And then spend who knows how much on changing websites and school names, not to mention all the SEO work that goes on behind the scenes, which, if you've done any amount of Google searching on a church subject, is a lot. Well, Nelson handles the construction of temples quite a bit differently than Hinkley did too, and the Boston Temple might just be the best example. You see, the Boston and other nearby temples have a bit of a history. It all started when Hinkley announced the construction of the Hartford, Connecticut temple in 1992, but apparently they hadn't yet nailed down a specific plot of land, and they had a hard time doing so because 3 years later, it was announced that instead of the Hartford Temple, they'd do two, one farther north and one farther south, the Boston Temple and the White Plains, New York Temple, which turned into the Harrison, New York Temple, which was eventually canceled and replaced with the Manhattan, New York Temple. It was messy, and it was messy because people fought back hard against the construction of these great and spacious buildings. The Harrison Temple, for example, was going to have a roof height of 44 feet with a 115-foot steeple on top in an area with the 30-foot height limit. The town said no. The church appealed, and a judge eventually ruled in their favor, religious freedom and all. But that ruling was just the beginning of 8 months of back and forth with public hearings, environmental studies, traffic studies. I mean, they were put through the ringer. Meanwhile, the church decided to use an existing building they already owned in Manhattan to convert into a temple. And that was close enough that apparently Hinley allowed the Harrison Temple to just be forgotten about. It was eventually quietly removed from the list of announced temples. To this day, they still don't have a temple there because of community pushback. So those in Fairview, Texas, Cody, Wyoming, Las Vegas, Nevada, Heber Valley, Utah, I'm probably missing some. Don't give up. But anyway, back to the Boston Temple, the north of the two. The church wanted to build a slightly scaled back version of the Washington, D.C. temple, essentially, complete with the priesthood assembly hall on an upper floor, 6 spires, a huge building prominently placed on a hill next to a main road, of course. Well, the community pushed back. And you know what Hinley did? He compromised. They removed the priesthood assembly hall from the upper floor. They changed the plans from 6 spires to just 1 that was not quite as high as the 6 were going to be. They scaled back the overall building so as to not be so visually commanding. So they started building the temple according to these new plans. But as it started going up, some local residents were still shocked at just how large it was. So they sued the church, claiming essentially reverse religious discrimination because the only reason the church was able to get permission to build such a large building was because they were, well, a church. But by then the building was almost complete. It just didn't have its steeple. And it was particularly important for Hinley to dedicate this temple because he had made a big deal about wanting 100 dedicated temples by the end of the year 2000. And this was temple number 100. So they went forward and dedicated it without its steeple. And you know what? The ordinances performed inside it were still considered valid, even without a steeple. Isn't that amazing? Of course, the church won the court case, though, so almost a year later, actually 10 days after 9/11, they placed the Angel Moroni statue on top of the new 139-foot steeple. Now, contrast that story with what is happening with current temple fights. Fairview, Texas says this proposed temple is way too big, so the church says they'll shorten it by 9%. That's it. Heber Valley, Utah says the proposed temple is way too bright. So the church pressured Wasatch County to change their dark skies laws so they can light it up anyway. Hinley was a media guy. He wanted the church to look good, and he wanted to be liked. Don't get me wrong, he was just as conniving. I mean, he was the one who said that they would not use any tithing funds for the construction of City Creek Mall. But Nelson doesn't give a damn if people like him. He just wants to have things his way. He's waited decades for this, all while watching people he didn't like make decisions he didn't agree with. And now he is finally in command of the ship with literally unlimited money from various sources at his disposal. So he is taking full advantage of his power and priesthood.
What do you think of Ryan's take there? It's very, very well researched and thought out, don't you think?
Yeah, it was really good. I would say that he said in 5 minutes what it's taken us hundreds of hours of podcasting to get through. But I guess what I'd like to say to everybody is that this is a decades old scenario, and the spotlight is just finally being shown, and other podcasters and people are getting interested in it. And that Rupa Law, that actually did come about because of the Boston Temple when people fought back. The 2 prior versions of that law were ruled unconstitutional. And then when they finally got their 3 Utah senators to put in this bill, Rupa, and it was voted on the surface, it sounds really good. It says you can't discriminate against somebody that's coming in, based on religion. And I've said it over and over. It's supposed to be used as a shield, and it should be used as a shield in certain situations. But Unfortunately, the church, who is not the David in any imaginable David and Goliath story, they are not the David. They are using Rupa as a sword to beat these towns down, and the spotlight is being shown, and we'll see. It's difficult, because I mean, a lot of our courts are very religiously based now. It's very dicey and hard to sort of push back on a religion. They seem to sort of have carte blanche, but enough of these temples, it's happening, and also shining a spotlight like Ryan did on what happened in the past to temples. And Mormon is just trying to do that too. We're going to have an episode coming out here in a week or so that does that. You can look to the past for examples of this, the same behavior, and this pattern is important. It's important to understand what they're doing. So anyway, take note, everybody. Watch some of these podcasts. It's really fascinating to see what's happening and how the legal system is being worked to the disadvantage of towns and people that it's supposed to protect like that. It is actually supposed to protect them from this kind of scenario. But in this case, it's being used as a sword.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me to see the difference between how President Hinckley approached temples and President Nelson approached temples. Even though they were both known as big-time temple presidents, they had a huge difference in the way that they approached things. Hinckley was much more magnanimous in his approach. And as Ryan Josiah said, President Nelson, he really just doesn't care, and he's willing to push things through. There's no way that President Nelson is going to let any of these temples ever just fall away like President Hinckley let the Harrisburg temple just fall away and build it somewhere else. He's prayed about it. He's supposedly gotten a divine answer, and he's going to move forward on those things, regardless of the human suffering or carnage that is left behind, and regardless of the amount of waste of money that is left behind either, because President Hinckley built his temples on the cheap. They were very inexpensive, probably only maybe $3 million for these prefabricated little mini temples that were 12,000 square feet. That's in diametric opposition to the temples that President Nelson is building. Some of them are 70, even 90,000 square feet and cost $100 million each. So there's just a category of difference. Now, no one follows this better than the Mormonish podcast. If you want to learn more about temples, they are the ultimate temple busting podcast covering platform, and the Mormon News Roundup. We are just barely behind them, but you can follow both of us. We're on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. You can follow us to learn more about LDS temples. Now, in politics, we don't cover it that much, but, Peggy Fletcher Stack over there at the Salt Lake Tribune, the vaunted journalist there, says that LDS President Nelson and Vice President Kamala Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee, after President Joe Biden has decided not to run for re-election, have a common friend, the Reverend Amos Brown. Who knew? What do you think about this? This is amazing. They're like two peas in a pod, Rebecca, don't you think?
I guess. I mean, they're just trying to make some kind of connection there. And I guess, they're talking about the church's relationship with the NAACP, of course, which we do see a lot of photos of handshaking and check passing off, but I do wonder if President Nelson is their friend and is Reverend Amos Brown's friend, has he checked in with him lately? Because the last I saw, and I'm sure you reported about it on the roundup, they were supporting and backing the young man in Hawaii who was in trouble at BYU Hawaii for having hair that doesn't look like it's supposed to look on campus, right? Is their friendship still as solid as they think? I'm not sure.
That's interesting here because BYU Hawaii student is fighting the BYU's rather regressive hair policies. BYU Hawaii and the other BYU campuses don't allow for dreadlocks. And Mr. Kanan Barton here has been fighting the grooming rules that he says are discriminatory towards his African-American ancestry. And guess what? The NAACP Legal Defense Fund has come to the rescue of not BYU, and not the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but this student in particular. So one wonders how well the NAACP and the Mormon Church really are bedfellows here. But by the way, do you think he's really sitting in that chair? Or do you think this is a deep fake? Just real quick question.
Oh my goodness. I have podcasted about this so much. I think I was one of the first ones to bring that up, and I always get so much pushback and so much trouble. I don't even care anymore. He can sit wherever he wants. He can do whatever he wants. I'm tired of podcasting about that little edge of his wheelchair, which is there, and you can see it. I'm done. Don't email me or text me about this topic.
Okay. I hit a sore subject there. Two peas in a pod. So they're both friends here with the Reverend Amos Brown, who serves as the president of the San Francisco branch of the NAACP. And he and Nelson have appeared a number of times in different venues here. So apparently they're both big time friends of President Nelson. And I do wonder, are they just trying to find some kind of a connection for the politics here? I do wonder how deep this connection really goes. It seems awfully superficial to me. That's all I can say about that. I want to debut our new segment here on the Mormon News Roundup, and it's the Ask Rebecca segment here. And I haven't run this past you before, but it is related to the last article here. It's the Ask, kind of like, Ask Abby. What is the Dear Abby?
Dear Abby. I read that religiously when I was a teenager. Absolutely.
Yeah, and they also have another one that's related to it. There's another one, that Ask Abigail and Dear Abby. Those are the two. And I want to just get a quick one here. We're running a new segment. This is Ask Rebecca. And my wife here, she sent $100. I tweeted this out on the day that Kamala Harris announced that Joe Biden was dropping out. And I said that my wife sent $100 to Kamala Harris as soon as she heard about Sleepy Joe dropping out of the race. And what is my proper response to that, Rebecca? I need to know, seriously. I don't know. What am I supposed to do with that information?
You know what? I don't know. I feel like as podcasters, we honestly should keep our politics out of it. There's nothing you can say that's not going to get you on either side of it. Hundreds of emails and texts. So I don't know. It's an election year. So of course it's there in the background. It's in the air. It's in the water. But I kind of feel like we all need to just make room for everybody and all their opinions, I guess.
I guess that was one of the biggest fundraising days in U.S. political history. And there was a lot of small donations, and she got, I sent a couple of memes to her, and that alerted to her. So I guess I regret kind of sending the memes to her because, the amount of money, there's billionaires out there giving hundreds of millions of dollars thanks to Citizens United that have flooded. That day had $100 million worth of donations. How much is $100 going to do? It's not going to do very much here. So I don't know.
Something, you know what I mean? Every drop in I mean, if we said that to our wonderful, kind donors that donate to Mormon News Roundup or to Mormonish or any of the others, I mean, honestly, if I get a $2 donation, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for thinking of us and going to the effort to do that. I say there's no amount too small, like the widow's mite, right?
I think the difference is the Mormonish podcast. I can't speak to the Mormonish podcast, but I get very few donations, and I don't have any multi-billion-dollar donors who are going to come in and send me hundreds of millions of dollars. So every dollar definitely does count in this. I guess that's the difference. A couple of other articles here. Jana Reese over there at the Religion News Service. We appeared, all three of us together on this podcast not that long ago. You remember that?
That was great. I do remember that. That was really nice. That's the first time I'd ever really met Jana, so that was fun.
And she talks about, wait a minute here, the sad come down of the Mormon Satan. Satan has become the voice of chronic self-doubt in your head, telling you that you're not good enough and that, hey, you really ought to eat that second brownie. That is hitting too close to home. What is she talking about here? What's wrong with Mormon Satan? Is he getting demoted? What's going on? I'm not in the know as much as you are, Rebecca.
Yeah, well, it's because I'm older than you are. But yeah, Satan, the devil, used to be very real. I mean, very, very real. When I was growing up, I had grandparents, that would say the devil is waiting behind every corner. You've got to be on guard. It was a real figure in your life that you thought about. I mean, even as recent as when my oldest son was about 4, in primary once, he came home and he was visibly kind of shaken. And he goes, Mom, is the devil really in my heart? I guess the primary teacher has said that the devil was in his heart. The devil was going to get him. So it was definitely there. And you heard a lot of people with encounters with the devil. I have a family member that said, I met the devil on the landing, on the stairwell in the middle of the night the other night. This was a very real phenomenon. And now it's more like exactly what you said. Now the devil is just sort of bad thought. They don't even call him the devil anymore. Now it's more the adversary. I hear that a lot as I help these towns with the temples, because they're always having fasts. They're always sending letters out to the LDS saying the adversary is against us. No, it's not the adversary. It's the fact that you're building a big ass temple. Lower it and there's no adversary. But I agree. It's been demoted to just more of a thought or a feeling or a negative idea. That's Satan. So, and I don't know, because Satan was always the most exciting character in the temple film, right? He always dressed the best and he had the best lines.
Well, yeah, Satan, especially back when he used to interact with a Protestant minister. Satan
right,
really
that's
showed,
what I'm saying.
The sectarian minister, Satan really let that sectarian minister have it. And back when Michael Bellum was Satan, now that was Satan. All these other guys are just pretenders. Absolutely. There will only be one Mormon Satan, and that will always be Michael Bellum. But getting back to the article, she said here, poor Satan, or rather, should I say poor adversary, because that's the preferred term that they've gravitated for. As this graph has shown, in the last half century of General Conference, the language shows that in the 1970s, it used to always be, here's the adversary in the 1970s, very small amount here. It used to all be about Satan. But as you've seen over time, the word Satan has been now replaced. Even the devil is on the decline. Yep. And it's all about this area in green. The area in green there is the adversary, whereas the red is the devil, the black is the Satan, and even Lucifer is also on the decline. All we have now is always about the adversary. So it's interesting to see how nomenclature and the lexicon has shifted over the years, because why do you think that these things shift? Why don't they stick with the same? Why, for instance, is the covenant path almost never mentioned up until 2015? And then it's mentioned literally 10 times a talk. Why does these words and verbs get shifted around so much?
Yeah, well, it's what they need to accomplish, I think. And I think in the case of Satan, the devil, Lucifer, that's magical thinking, right? That's somebody with horns. We don't have as much magical thinking. So now you have to turn it into something that's an adversarial force against you. Everybody can relate to that, right? Everybody has a self-depreciating thought, or something bad happens and you can blame, okay, so the classic example is you've signed up to go to the temple and something happens. You lose your keys, or you don't have gas in your car, or someone calls. It's always the adversary trying to stop you from going to the temple, right? You can spin it however you want, but we don't have that magical thinking. We don't think the actual devil, like my relative, is standing on the stairwell at night when you get up in your pajamas to go get a drink of water. And in my case, this relative tussled with the devil. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But yeah, we don't believe that anymore. We don't. If someone were to tell that story in sacrament meeting or in testimony meeting, we'd all go, okay, yeah. But if you say the adversary tried to stop me from going to the temple because I couldn't find my contact lenses or something, that's an inspiring story. So I actually feel it's just a way to create inspiring stories where fewer and fewer opportunities exist.
Now, we got a couple other articles to take us through here. And the next one is from, once again, LDSliving.com, one of my favorite sources out there. And they actually have a pretty good article here, which talks about weaving strong relationships with children who question or leave the church with these practical steps. So they're recommending that everyone should see each other through an empathetic lens. They also recommend that we should reject cognitive distortions. And finally, they say we should take practical steps for a stronger relationship, including focusing on the present, revising expectations, creating clear boundaries, learning to communicate empathically across differences, treating individuals as people, not objects, and looking to the scriptures for parental examples. Seems like a pretty decent article here, especially considering the amount of people that we know are leaving the church. We're seeing a lot of strained relationships, especially among adult parents and their children. Religion can be an absolutely taboo topic, and people who leave, there's often a simmering resentment that's on both sides, and it can be very difficult to communicate. I think that LDS Living has pointed us pretty decently in the right direction of making sure that we have compassion towards other people, regardless of their beliefs. And I want to say that this is in diametric opposition to what we read, though, in the last General Conference, in which it was 2 General Conferences ago, in which President Nelson said that we should never take counsel with those who don't believe. In other words, typically religion is setting up an us versus them mentality. We are the sheep, they are the goats. We are the wheat, they are the tares. They're going to be burned. We're not. We're the chosen ones. We are best friends with an invisible celestial dictator, and you are destined for a lower kingdom of glory. And this article seems to be trying to maybe turn that back a little bit, which is a tall order considering the rhetoric that we get out of church headquarters, right?
Yeah, I think so too. I thought the article was good. And I feel like they should also put a subtitle on it that says, this advice also works if you're the adult who's left and your children are still in the church, because you have those very same issues. I would say even more issues on top of that if it's the adults that have left, if the parents have left and the children are in. The bottom line is try to preserve relationships at whatever cost you can. Decide that you must do that. If that means a Chinese wall, if that means whatever, but the relationship is the most important. Easy to say, extremely hard to enact. I think a lot of us live that scenario.
Unfortunately, a lot of us all too well do. And I know that your parents have passed away here recently. So my heart goes out to you for that. And I'm sorry to hear that. And I lost my father a few years ago as well. And a story that I've told many times, and I guess I'll just reiterate one time, is that, while I was in the church for the most of my life, I was in the church and he was out of the church. He really lived a life of really debauchery and alcoholism, really hedonism, drug addiction, really a wild lifestyle. And I was in the church and he was out. We maintained a good relationship. And then unbelievably, with about a year left to go in his life, he gave it all up and went back to church. And we still maintained a good relationship through the whole thing. So it certainly is possible, although it is definitely a challenge. strange.
Fascinating. And then you just flip-flopped at the end. So, well, and I think so, like with my parents, yeah, exactly what you said. My dad passed away 3 months ago and my mom just on the 4th of July. And, they were in their late 80s. I never really even told them anything about me leaving or anything like that, because I didn't feel they were in a position where they could really understand at this point. And I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't want to make them nervous. I didn't want to scare them or worry them. So, but now that they both passed away, it's a weird feeling because I feel like they really didn't know the real me for about the last, couple decades, which is sad, I think, in a lot of ways. But I made that decision. And I know a lot of older parents can understand and handle that news. But in my case, I knew that they absolutely would not have any comprehension of what I was talking about or why. So I maintained the relationship, and there it is. But a little part of me now is like, they never knew I had a podcast. They never knew anything about it.
My mother eventually found out about the Mormon News Roundup, although I never did tell her. And I've asked her, we grew up in the same ward as Spencer Kimball. What is it? The 13th prophet of the church. He lived over on Laird Avenue. I lived on Sheridan Road. This is before the church presidents lived downtown in the presidential condo that the church has now, tax-free. We have a legendary story of when I was a baby and I was very, very ill, and that I actually received a blessing from Spencer Kimball himself. It's a legendary tale that I've heard spoken by my father, but my father has passed away. And I've asked my mother a number of times to give me the information, everything that she remembers about that, because I want to know about that story. And because I have a podcast, she says she doesn't want that information to appear in the podcast. So she's holding my childhood memories hostage based upon the religion or based upon the podcast that I have now. And it's really sad because she's the only one left who really knows that story, who's still alive. So it's sad to see how religion can divide people. I wish I could get that story because it would mean a lot to me. I want to hear about my interactions with Spencer Kimball as a child. That's a special memory that I only have incomplete data on now.
That is so interesting. I wonder if she'd be willing to write it down and then after she passes away, maybe share it. But I understand that because I've also been told, don't talk about me, don't share anything about me by family members, and I think it just speaks to the fact that they have a misunderstanding, I think, of exactly what we do, because at least everybody that I know in the podcasting world, nobody's making fun, nobody's making light. We're all trying to be respectful of everybody across the aisle, or, I understand there's fear because it's kind of the unknown. So, but for myself, I try to be very respectful of all points of view, although still trying to tell the truth.
Yeah, for those of you out there, if you could leave us a 5-star review, if you could hit the thumbs up, we'd appreciate that. And let us know in the comments how your relationship with your parents, has it changed if you've left the church, or if you're all still a part of the church. Let us know, how is it that you're supposed to maintain family relationships in mixed faith families where parents have left the church or have children have left the church? What are we supposed to do to maintain those things? Because family is one of the most important things that we can have. And I preference my family relationships over any relationships with any organization, really, whether it's an employer, whether it's a religion, whether it's anything. So that's important. Now, a couple of other articles to take us out. We're about to cover the Olympics, but this is the last article before that. And this really hit my eye here too. The queen of the Tradwives, the queen of the Mormon Tradwives, speaks out about raising 8 kids on a remote ranch, giving birth without any pain relief. This is the Mormon mom, the queen of the Tradwives, is speaking out here. And here's a picture of her right here with her family. Wow, this is a handsome crew here. Needleman has been dubbed the queen of the Tradwives, which is short for a traditional wife, a term that refers to a woman who proudly eschews a career in favor of domestic duties such as cooking, cleaning, and child rearing. And the reason that she is the queen here, she's also been crowned Miss Idaho here. She's really, really something. It's just incredible here to see, there she is with her crown, milking the cows, a multifaceted mom of 8, defies any easy labeling. She cooks and cleans for the kids. She runs a wildly successful Instagram account. She's a model. She's a beauty queen. She is really unbelievable. What do you think about the Mormon queen of the Tradwives here? Her father-in-law is the billionaire businessman, David Needleman, who founded JetBlue Airways. That certainly helps if you're trying to stay at home, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And if you read, they have a lot of help, not with the child rearing, because that's what she does, but they have a lot of help in other areas. Somebody, I wish I could quote it exactly, made a post about how, the Tradwife is just a new name for what everybody's been doing all along. I was a Tradwife and I didn't even know it, right? I was cooking and cleaning, not the painkiller stuff. I had C-sections. That would have been a little, I couldn't have handled that. Yeah, it's interesting. I know there's been a lot of kind of controversy around this article and getting to know more about her. And I know, she is a beauty queen, and there's a part of the article where she just gave birth. And I think it's 2 weeks later. She's
right
there
here. 12 days afterwards. She competed in a beauty pageant 12 days after giving birth with no pain relief. Holy cow.
It's incredible. I mean, some people are just super people. And I know there's appeal to watch that because it's something that the rest of us probably couldn't do. It's a situation we probably would never find ourselves in on a farm with a husband who's an heir to, a massive fortune and living this lifestyle. But I think people like to see what's on the other side. And that's why there's such appeal. But I know there's a lot of controversy around the Tradwife moniker, for good or for bad. But I do know that she's wildly popular. So, and everyone should be able to live the life they want to live and do what they want to do. But I know there was some concern in the article from the reporter that she wasn't really allowed to, or didn't choose to speak to the reporter without her husband being there. There were some things like that where you're thinking, how far do you take the Tradwife, the Tradwife thing? So I don't know. Only they know their dynamic, and then that's what they've chosen.
Yeah, I'm not here to shame anybody for their beliefs as long as they're not harming other people. I don't see a lot of necessarily an inherent harm here, but I do find it remarkable in the particular article here that we read here that she says, while the pair proclaim that they are co-CEOs, Needleman frequently finds that she gets so ill from exhaustion that she can't get out of bed for a week. And that's the problem, is that when you live in almost an emaciated state, which is what you need for these beauty pageants of, having 12% body fat, working out all the time. You're trying to run a farm. You have 8 kids, but you can't, have the nutrition that you really need. You can't let yourself go even a tiny little bit. She's getting exhausted from running all of these things. I don't know. This is starting to seem borderline creepy here. That's not normal for someone to have so exhaustion that they can't get out of bed for a week. And this is the critique of the Tradwives movement. We see an outward-facing Instagram account with beautiful pictures, these smiling, gleaming children here, these fabulously wealthy situations where they're on vacation or they're on these giant ranches because her husband's an heir to a billionaire. And we see one side, but then when we peel back the onion on the inside, it's kind of like Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Frankie. What we see down beneath can be very, very harmful, in that there's a lot of harmful things that could potentially be going on that are hidden from public view. And that brings up a lot of questions for people. I'm not trying to shame anybody. If you want to be a Tradwife, I have no stake in the game. That's, you live your life, you be your best self.
No, and I agree with you on this. I feel like eventually we may hear some other things about that family or that scenario that might be a little more what you're describing.
We see even in an article in which you, how did the news reporter gain this information? Well, they must have gained it from herself, right? She must have told them that. So it seems like there's troubling things that could be percolating. I wish this family the very best. I hope that they have happy, wonderful, healthy lives. I'm not wishing that they, that something bad happens to them. And this is also what religion and really Mormonism teaches you to do. You have to put on a happy face. It goes back to that primary song. If by chance you meet a frown, do not let it stay. You have to always have
turn it upside down and smile the day. I'm a primary pianist at heart. I know them all. I can't help but sing them.
I am too. I know them all too. I can play this piano right here behind me. I can play that song for you right now. You always have to put on a happy face, and it kind of, you can never be your true self. And that can lead to a lot of problems, especially if you always have to be that beauty queen. You always have to be the Tradwife. You always have to be out there. All of a sudden you're trying to raise 8 kids, and it's difficult to do. And if you always have to be happy and always have to push your emotions down, it can lead to harmful outcomes. And we've seen that happen. I hope it doesn't happen here. I'm concerned about some of these Tradwife influencers out there and the message that they send, because there's a lot of, especially to other women, it says, well, if I'm not a size 2, if I don't weigh 115 pounds, if I'm not, have 8 kids, if I don't have 1 million followers on Instagram, if I don't have a billionaire husband, then I haven't, then I somehow failed in my parental or wife duties. And that can send a hard message to, especially to other women, which it seems very, very difficult. So I have a lot of hard feelings about these particular articles.
Yeah, it must be the adversary. That's why I don't weigh 115 pounds. It's got to be the adversary, I'm telling you. But no, you're not wrong. And how many times do we hear, well, just recently, the American Fork couple, right? The murder-suicide, where everyone in the ward is like, they were perfect. They were just at a baseball game. We never saw this coming.
Now, let's get to the Olympics, and that's basically our last article here is from the Olympics. And the first one that I got for you here, are you watching the Olympics? Did you watch the opening games here?
I watched the opening ceremony, or tried to, and I haven't watched anything else yet, but I will.
No problem. We'll get you up to speed here right quick here. So first of all, from Team LGBTQ, Outsports.com just released a article here that says Mormon and gay Team USA rugby player Steph Rovetti is excited to be out and an Olympian. So here she is on the right-hand side here. I guess I'm very ignorant of rugby because for some reason, I guess it's sexist. I always thought it was a male sport, but they do have women's rugby teams too. For those people out there who think I'm woke, I guess I'm proving them wrong. But anyway, she's a lifelong athlete who has thrived in rugby. She's come from a religious background. I hope to be a representative of courage to be your true, authentic self, she says about being out. So here's a couple of pictures of her. Who is she? Well, she plays fly half and scrum half for the USA Rugby Sevens team. This is her first Olympics. Here is a picture of her. She's here on the right, raised LDS. According to this article, she still is a member, and she's at the Paris Olympics here. I do wonder how that's all going to work out for her as far as her church being an out-and-out gay member, being a Mormon at the same time. Seems like a very complicated and difficult thing to balance.
Yeah, again, every time I see a headline like that, I'm like, yes, that's awesome. And then I'm like, oh dear, I'm so worried. Is she in a relationship? That's where all the trouble seems to start, right? So we'll see. But I'm glad to see somebody that's in the spotlight right there that we can all watch and then kind of track exactly what's happening with another member of the LGBTQ community who is in the spotlight, has celebrity status, and what will happen. I mean, we can learn from watching that.
Yeah, I wish her the very best in her rugby endeavors and wherever else life takes her. Now, the next article here is from the church itself, from France. Bishop Kaz, of course, he's French, the presiding bishop of the church, and Olympians speak to youth throughout Europe. The Bordeaux native says that the 2024 Summer Olympics echo Christ's teachings to be one. And here he is with one of my favorite athletes here, Jimmer Fredette, the BYU basketball legend and former NBA star who also had an incredible career in China in basketball. Let's see what Bishop Kaz and Jimmer have to say about this Olympics.
I believe the main message has to be that life is like a race in a way. We have a destination, which is to be back to our Heavenly Father, and all of us are champions.
The Olympics inspire billions of people throughout the world. Leaders and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints met just prior to the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, where they discussed sports through the lens of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Ce sont des exemples qui ont inspiré les générations dans l'Église.
Gérald Cossé, presiding bishop of the church, led this event.
These young men and young women and young adults are going to come, and they want to learn from the experience of fellow Latter-day Saints that are champions in their own categories, and see how the gospel has influenced their life and how their performances have been influenced by their beliefs.
He shoved the cup in my face. I took it, I waved it to the crowd, handed it down to the other judge.
Each of the speakers discussed the importance of developing talents, recognizing potential, and facing failure to overcome setbacks.
You have to have that faith in your preparation that you're going to do. I didn't know that was going to happen when I was young. I just had faith, and the gospel is similar. You have to have faith, but you have to, make sure you're in the right mindset to have that faith and continue to push forward even when times are tough.
They have a yearning to be happy and a yearning to be close to the Savior, and I'm so impressed with this rising generation. You can be a disciple of Christ and an example of the believers just through the way you live your life to your friends and to those around you. You don't have to grow up to learn to do that. You can do it right now.
To persevere even when we have some struggle in life, which is normal. So it's important to be Christ-centered and keep having faith.
The gospel's message is that everything is possible, It's still possible. Like you can be down, the gospel and Jesus Christ tells you that hope is possible, changes are possible.
Those changes, leaders say, come through a reliance on Jesus Christ and the principles of his gospel.
There's really a spiritual side with sports, and those gifts and talents must be put together and contribute to doing good for others, to minister to others, to be a good influence in this world. And this is, I think, the spirit that we find in the Olympics.
Well, absolutely nobody does a propaganda video better than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Nobody does such a good job of tacking a gospel message onto just an international event that doesn't, really have anything to do with religion.
I'm a big fan of Jimmer Fredette. Now, he's there for the Olympics for the 3-on-3 basketball. There's two different basketball events. Okay. Well, there's men's, women's, full team, 5-on-5, and then there's 3-on-3. I think this is the first year that they've had it. And Jimmer is on the Olympic team representing the United States for the 3-on-3 basketball. And I followed Jimmer's career his entire life. I'm a huge Jimmer fan. Him personally, his relationship with his wife, what he's done with charity, with his basketball camps. I have a giant man crush on Jimmer Fredette. I'll just put it that way.
You heard it here.
I am incredibly disappointed with seeing Jimmer Fredette next to Bishop Kaz. And it's really for the following reason. I mean, Bishop Kaz is one of the biggest fraudsters in the history of the world. Okay, he was at the helm. He's supposed to be the one who is managing the church's finances when it was fined $5 million for the SEC. He helped perpetuate one of the largest financial scams in history. And now Jimmer has, in my mind, sullied his reputation by standing next to him like this is no big deal. How in the world does Bishop Kaz think that he can go out in public after being one of the biggest fraudsters of engineering a fraud of $150 billion? Let's just put this on the scale. Bernie Madoff's fraud was $20 billion. Bishop Kaz is 8 times larger than that, and Bernie Madoff's was the largest in history up until that time. Now Jimmer is palling around with this absolute charlatan, this fraudster, who perpetuated a scam on the members of the church to solicit donations. That hurts my feelings so deeply with Jimmer because I want Jimmer to win. I want him to succeed. I love Jimmer Fredette. And to see him next to Bishop Kaz, that just really grieves me. Rebecca, am I taking this just too seriously or what?
No, I feel that the average member doesn't have any understanding or knowledge of exactly what you just said. So I don't think Jimmer knows anything about that. Wouldn't even know what you were talking about. So he has no problem standing next to him, right? That was so 2 years ago. Nobody cares. Nobody knows. No one understood it. The church said the matter was closed. It's closed.
I appreciate your feedback. What I'm going to do is go forward and say that Jimmer didn't know about this because I still want to root for Jimmer, and I don't want to ascribe any bad intentions to him like he just doesn't think this is a big deal. So I'm just going to assume that Jimmer didn't know. But Jimmer, if you ever come across this video, Bishop Kaz is an absolute disgrace of a human being, and you should never be associated with him in any capacity whatsoever. The idea, and especially it's not just Bishop Kaz, that these other apostles are going to go out and give moral teachings to us after taking absolutely no accountability for engineering the largest financial scam in history, where nobody's been held to account on this. It poisons the teachings of this. We have a slick message here that has all the wonderful Olympic feelings and the warm, fuzzy music that goes along with it and the elevation emotion. And behind it is a cold vision for how Bishop Kaz has helped hoard $150 billion and has not used that at all. It's not just the fraud of the fine. It's also hoarding it and not using it to alleviate human suffering. It's a double whammy, and it's absolutely reprehensible. And I'm just going to go forward, like you said, Rebecca, and assume that Jimmer doesn't know anything about it. And I'm just going to live in that fantasy, okay?
I think you should. And if he does know something about it, there is the attitude, whatever it takes to further the Lord's kingdom, whatever it takes. I mean, there may be a little questionable tactics, but whatever it takes. Like I talk about back to temple building, having a relative that I discussed temple building and everything that was happening and some of the tactics in the playbook. And I said, does this seem ethical to you, what the church is doing to these towns? And the person said, well, yeah, I can see there's some problems there, but whatever it takes. The Lord's temple must be built at whatever cost. And I think that's how they look at the financial scandal too.
That's a sad reality, and I hope that it is not true, honestly. A couple of other takes here from the Olympics here. Weirdos are melting down over the Olympics ceremonies here. And we have, that's a golden calf. It's not accidental that a bull was displayed on the center of the opening ceremony here. We have the golden calf here. Is that Baal worship in the opening ceremonies? People are really melting down over this stuff. What do you think, Rebecca? Golden calf?
Well, everybody's assigning all of this religious significance, and I don't know if that's exactly what they're going for. Some of these are archetypal images that transcend Christianity, and we'll get into more of that later with something else. So I'm not sure if they're trying to be disrespectful to Christianity, or they're just trying to portray a more international, historical, worldwide view on a world stage.
It's amazing. If you look at everything through a religious lens, you can find persecution
That's
almost
what I'm
anywhere.
saying. Yep,
you know?
that's exactly what I'm saying.
This is a nice picture of the USA team here with LeBron James holding that flag. If you can't feel patriotic looking at that, I don't know where you can feel patriotic. That's a nice photo there.
Yeah,
I do like that.
good.
I'm a big LeBron James fan. Dan McClellan weighed in on the opening ceremonies because people are saying not only is there a golden calf in the opening ceremonies, the beast that's depicted in Revelation is in the opening ceremonies. Yeah. Are you serious here? Dan McClellan, he's going to answer that question for us. He always gives the absolute best takes, don't you think?
Yeah, no, he's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
If you don't think symbolism is real, look at what just took place during the opening ceremonies for the Olympics.
Well, I don't know anybody who doesn't think symbolism is real, but all right, let's see it.
Here we saw a hidden cloaked figure riding on a horse. Behind him, what would seem totally abnormal is a pair of wings.
So there's absolutely nothing mysterious about that rider. That is a member of the gendarmerie, which is a military force that has law enforcement responsibilities among the civilian population in France. And that rider is a woman, and her name is Floriane Isser, and she represents the spirit of the Olympic Games.
What do we know about Lucifer and his fall? Well, he was a fallen angel, and 1/3 of the angels rebelled and fell with him.
No, Lucifer is nowhere identified as an angel anywhere in the Bible. Lucifer is just a sarcastic way of mocking the king of Babylon for his hubris that we find in Isaiah 14. The idea of Satan being a fallen angel who took 1/3 of the host of heaven with him comes primarily from the Enochic literature and then is further fleshed out in the book of Revelation. But that's not Lucifer. Nobody identified Lucifer with Satan until after the entire Bible had been completed.
Revelation 6 mentions the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. One references to a white horse as well as a pale horse. So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him.
So the Greek word that is sometimes translated pale is choros, which refers to a sickly, pale, yellowish green. This is about sickness. This is not depicting a silver metallic horse.
In Revelation 6, we're told of the beast that rides the white horse.
So the white horse is only mentioned in verse 2, and it doesn't call the rider a beast. It just says the one who rode it had a crown and a bow and went forth conquering and to conquer. And this is representative of the Roman Empire and its thirst for conquest.
In Revelation 13:3, it tells us, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. And what do we see here? That same cloaked figure riding a white horse. What's behind him? All the nations of the world following after him.
So here we're arbitrarily conflating the imagery of the beast from Revelation 13 with the imagery of the white horse and the rider from Revelation 6. They are entirely unrelated. And it says that the whole earth marveled and followed after the beast after it received a fatal head wound and then recovered from that fatal head wound. And no, this has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump. This is just late 1st century CE apocalyptic imagery that is probably encoding events associated with Nero Redivivus, this tradition that Nero didn't really die or would come back from the dead. But to conflate Revelation 6 with Revelation 13 just arbitrarily, and then identify it with this woman, not a man, who was riding this white horse in the Olympic opening ceremonies is just monumentally stupid.
This stuff isn't a coincidence. The imagery suggests that it's pointing exactly to the beast or the Antichrist of the book of Revelation.
No, the imagery suggests absolutely no such thing whatsoever. You just don't understand it, and you think that anything you don't understand is Satan. and you need to grow up.
I just love those takes. He absolutely dismantles people so easily. He literally, he's just walking around in a park. He's got the video open. He's just pausing it and giving his thoughts. I bet he didn't even take multiple takes on this. It takes me hours to put together something like this. He's forgotten more things than I'll probably ever know.
Yeah, he's just great. I love that. I love it when he does things like that. But again, I think people are right now supercharged to look for apocalyptic imagery. I see that everywhere. Unfortunately, the games, it did have a lot of imagery in those opening ceremonies that you could look at and interpret through your own lens. Nope. Revelation's not for our day, not at all.
And this is what he said. Once again, I'm asking Christians to grow the hell up and stop pretending that everything they don't understand or like is Satan. So that's a pretty good take here. One of the most interesting Mormon channels to me is actually Christian Homestead, because you want to talk about people who look for apocalyptic end times type of things, who's wishing that Jesus will come again and is looking for the signs of the times. Christian Homestead, who has almost 40,000 subscribers, which, for those people out there with Mr. Beast, that's not very many, but in the Mormon sphere, that's absolutely huge. He has a very popular channel, and he actually talked about this opening ceremonies here. I want to play this clip from Christian Homestead, who says, "This is outrageous. The opening ceremony for the Paris Olympics. The world is fully ripe for destruction." And he's taking issue with what happened at the opening ceremonies with the Last Supper. The opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics included a reenactment of the Last Supper by trans people and drag queens. Why is it okay to openly mock and hate Christians? Let's hear what Christian Homestead has to say about this controversial opening ceremonies depiction.
The opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics included a reenactment of the Last Supper by trans people and drag queens. Yeah, the Last Supper. This is just outright like begging for the world to be destroyed at this point. This is just outright begging for the second coming to happen. This is just, it's such a mockery. My blood is kind of boiling at this. I cannot believe that things have stooped so low to where now this is like on primetime TV, a major world event, families watching this. Families, oh my gosh.
Did the Olympics just create a parody of Jesus's Last Supper with drag queens?
All right, let's see it.
Well, that is the question being asked after last night's Olympic ceremony took place.
And you already answered your own question by showing that clip with that blue figure in front of the table. Who on earth do they represent in the painting The Last Supper? Nobody. That's Dionysus. Even the actor who portrayed that character said, "This is Dionysus." Even the Olympics said, "This is Dionysus." This is an allusion to a painting that is housed in a church in France called the Feast of the Gods, which depicts Dionysus feasting in front of a table where there's a wedding feast going on, where Apollo is featured at the center of the table with a halo behind his head. The Olympics version has the person seated in the middle wearing a 7-pointed halo. That originates in Greek iconography that was borrowed into Christianity. That is associated with Apollo, with Helios, with Dionysus, with other deities that represent the sun or are merged with it. It has nothing to do with the Last Supper.
In a couple of the acts, some are claiming that religious imagery was used, like the golden calf.
That is not the golden calf. That is a statue called Bull and Deer. It was created by Paul Jouve in 1937 for a contest in France. It has been housed at the Trocadero for many decades, and that temporary stage was built in the Trocadero around the statues that are there. It has absolutely nothing to do with worship or with the golden calf.
The fourth horseman.
See my video number McClellan 2175 for why it is monumentally stupid to think that horse represents any of the horsemen of the apocalypse.
And one scene in particular is being compared to Leonardo da Vinci's mural of Jesus and his 12 disciples. In the scene, broadcast cameras pan out on a number of drag queens standing behind a raised stage, with one in the middle wearing a piece on her head that is likened to religious drawings of a halo with lines of light emanating out of it. Some outraged with this scene said this is extremely disrespectful to Christians, and that the Olympics declared loudly that the 2.4 billion Christians on Earth are not welcome.
So the only thing being disrespected here is a competent grasp of culture. Because this outrage, whether it's real or feigned, is phenomenally hypocritical and misplaced, because this isn't about the Last Supper. But even if it were, there's nothing wrong with using imagery from a famous piece of art to offer some social commentary as Jesus would have eaten with drag queens. They're allowed to say, hey, we have a seat at this table as well. And there would have been the same hypocrites out front gnashing their teeth at them the whole time too. And even if it is intended to be a critique or, heaven forbid, mockery, you don't get to spend so much time and effort trying to convince the world that everybody's part of a Christian culture, that Western civilization was built by Christianity, that is the foundation of our art and architecture and literature and law and everything, and then turn around and try to police who's allowed to critique it and which critiques are allowed. If they were born and raised in that culture, then that's their culture too. So, irrespective of what was intended here, trying to demonize and vilify these folks just so you can be persecuted, so you can feel like you're in the last days, so you can read yourself into the book of Revelation, is phenomenally harmful and hypocritical, and you need to do better.
According to Christian, this is absolute proof that the world is just begging to be destroyed. Now, I just want to say, we don't really even know if there was a Last Supper. I mean, we don't really even know for sure that Jesus existed to begin with. I mean, I will grant that somebody like Jesus existed, or several apocalyptic end-time preachers were conflated into one person, okay? We certainly can't confirm or know for certain that there was a Last Supper. The idea that you would see someone who is a trans individual, and that's a begging for the world to be destroyed, and that no child should ever see somebody who is trans, that's pretty harmful ideology in my mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of problematic things about all the uproar around this. And again, that's exactly right. Why is that mockery? Just having certain people reenact it. And again, I kind of watched it. I mean, it was sort of like, I think it was like a fashion show, and they were kind of on the side. And until somebody pointed out it was supposed to be the Last Supper, I don't even know that it was, because it was kind of a party. It looked like a gathering. I kind of read they were trying to reenact sort of a Dionysus-like scenario, you know, the party, the wine, good feelings, good friends kind of a thing. And I counted up the apostles. There were 15 people. And what they were saying was that grouping, if I counted right in the picture that I saw. Again, I think you just look for that religious iconography. If that's your mindset, that's what you're going to see. But like you said, are you seeing the painting of the Last Supper? Is that painting the Last Supper? No, it's not. But we all know the artwork is real. We see that all the time with Joseph Smith and the translation. How do we know there were gold plates? We've seen that picture 100 times growing up in many different versions. We know there were because of the artwork. How do we know Nephi was on the boat? We've seen that painting in the Book of Mormon, right? We know just because of the artwork. That is not the Last Supper in the painting. We don't even know what that was, if it ever happened, any of it. It just makes me realize there was a strong article. Is this the one from the Tribune that you're about to show, about how Mormon leaders and LDS leaders and people here in Utah have openly criticized this supposed Last Supper reenactment? And I'm thinking 10 years from now, when we have the Olympics, what do you think the world is going to be like, honestly? And this is an international stage. There are different sensibilities.
You know, I missed if the church leaders or anyone high-ranking had condemned that Last Supper thing. I have missed it, so I will have to try to include that in the show notes. But the church did this week release an official statement about not this Olympics, but about the Olympics that's coming to Salt Lake City. And this is our last article here, and the Winter Olympics. Let me just read this statement here from the newsroom. The First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints issued the following statement. The Mormon Church extends its heartfelt congratulations to Salt Lake City on securing the bid to host the 2034 Winter Olympics. We celebrate this news, recalling the feelings of unity, peace, and friendship that characterized the event when it last hosted in Utah in 2002. We stand ready to support the 2034 Olympic Games in welcoming athletes, volunteers, and visitors from around the world. The church is committed to efforts to make the Salt Lake City a great host that embodies the values, service, cooperation, and mutual respect. As the home of the international headquarters of the church, we will work with organizers at both local and international levels. So the church didn't release anything in particular that I saw officially on the Paris Olympics, but they are looking forward to the 2034 Olympics. And it's always kind of amusing because you would expect to get that announcement from the state of Utah itself, but it seems like in Utah, the church kind of thinks that it is the one who needs to release statements like this.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't the church. I was looking at it really late last night, but there was something, I think, on ABC4 News here in Utah that said local officials or something. So maybe I think it was the governor. We're going to have to look it up, but definitely the tone of the article was, this is not going to happen 10 years from now. It said we are going to reflect family values here in Utah. We can't wait for the world to come and see our morals and our values, which are far superior to what you're seeing here on the international stage in Paris.
Yeah, I do wonder what kind of values we'll hear. Hopefully, I wonder if they're going to bring out any of those incredibly harmful teachings of Brigham Young or Marky Peterson or any of the other bizarre racist, sexist, homophobic doctrines.
Racist,
Yeah, are those the family values that we're going to hear about? The family values of running a $180 billion fraudulent clandestine hedge fund? Are those the family values of hoarding the widow's mite and of taking no accountability? Those are the family values that we're going to be espousing. I would rather see what's happening in the Paris Olympics than something like that. That does take us to our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week here. We release new episodes of the Mormon News Roundup every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you come on over to the live chat at that time, you can interact with the humble host. I appreciate those of you out in the live chat right now. If you will be ready to cast your vote, I would appreciate that. And the Mormon News Roundup poll of the week, what is it this time, Rebecca? What are we talking about?
Ooh, it's top 10 ways the church needs to get ready for the 2034 Olympics. And you're not wrong there, because I was here in Utah, of course, for 2002. And boy, there was a lot of lead up to that. A lot of it. There was a lot of scandal. Remember that? There was a lot of, was it embezzling? There was something. Anyway, they had to call Mitt Romney in to literally save the games. And that's where he kind of got on the radar right there. So yeah, he had to come and take over. And if I remember right, Utah was on the world stage for their gross mishandling of funds and some just things that were kind of sketchy, right behind the scenes when those Olympics were being planned.
I think it was more the IOC committee bungled things rather than the state of Utah bungled it. And then
but it was happening at the Olympic Games. Yeah.
Yes, it was happening. I don't think it was the federal or the state level Utah or U.S. government. It was the IOC committee had bungled things very significantly. Mitt Romney came in, Constitution and the Olympics hanging by a thread. Yes. Brother Romney, the high priest, former governor of the state of Massachusetts, definitely rescued the Olympics and eventually became a presidential contender, narrowly missing the presidency in 2012. But yes, our poll this week, the top 10 ways for the church needs to get ready for the 2034 Olympics. And what's your example number one here, Rebecca?
It says, number one, fire Brad Wilcox, or at least confine him to house arrest. Yes, if he starts making statements or giving any kind of, press, any kind of interviews, that can be problematic, again, on a world stage. We here in the LDS community, we understand Brad. We know what he's all about, but I think it'd be pretty shocking on a world stage to hear some of those statements.
Well, Rebecca, we just need to preemptively confine him to house arrest. We can't afford to let this thing, let him run amok. He has absolutely no filter. Or how about number two?
Couple more DEI hires like Gong and Suarez. Yeah, that's a good one. That's probably accurate. Yeah, they do need to put that face out, because when you look at it on a superficial look at it, it doesn't look like this picture right here.
No, it does not there. These are tongue-in-cheek polls here, so people don't need to get too exercised over this.
Yeah.
Or how about number three?
Salt Lake Temple renovation addition, Olympic-sized baptismal font. That's a good one. And I am positive this is why they are pushing everything at the renovation. I go visit it every couple of months. They have two massive visitor centers in front of the temple. To me, it's almost blocking the temple. And these are going to, as I understand it, be sort of recreations of what's inside the temple. So in the past, at the 2002 Olympics, people would come to Temple Square, missionaries would point at the building and go, stuff goes on in there. The people leave going, I don't know what that was. Now they're going to have visitor centers where they're going to show a ceiling room. They're going to show what a font looks like. They're going to be able to explain it a little more clearly. I know they're doing all this in preparation to be on that world stage and to have everybody flocking to Utah, to Temple Square. And they got to get that people mover going, right? Those plans that were leaked a couple of years ago.
The monorail.
People mover, the monorail. They've got to get that theme park going. And I think they're doing a good job. They're making amazing progress.
If they do renovate, if they inside the visitor center, I'd love to see something like this. That for me is very inspiring. That chandelier probably costs $50,000, which is chump change when you have as much money as the church has. Or how about number four?
Oh, the Relief Society will cater at Olympic Village, donuts, casserole, and Jell-O. Well, they do need carbs. They do need some carbs to keep going as they're competing. So yes, maybe so.
Absolutely. Now, if you're a Mormon Tradwife, you're not allowed to eat any of that. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, sorry, I'm not.
You can prepare it, but you can't eat it.
Yeah, apparently not.
That's part of it I didn't get. I would prepare it, but then, I didn't get that part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Or how about number five?
Number five is Olympic torch relay will trace 1,300-mile Mormon Pioneer handcart journey. I can see that might actually be something that happens because they say they want to focus on the Mormon heritage and the family values. This would be something I can see incorporating the Mormon Pioneer Trail into the running of the torch. I think you're prophetic here. I think this is not even tongue in cheek. I think this could be real.
Well, President Hinley back in the 2002 Olympics, he held the torch here. Now, I don't know if Russell M. Nelson is up for that, considering how old he is. They may need to deep fake him or use a body double for him to hold that torch.
How old will he be he'll be 110, right? So he could do it. Yeah, I took my little kids when they ran the torch for 2002 it was a mall in Provo, and we all stood there in the freezing cold and watched somebody run by, but it was fun. I was trying to create a memory for my kids, and that was an interesting Olympic.
That was a great Olympics. Great memories here. I'm sure it's going to go well for Utah in 2034 for sure. Or how about number 6?
Okay, update the handbook guidance on priesthood blessings for injured Olympic athletes. And this will be amazing. Think about it. When somebody's injured, they won't expect it. Some elders will swoop down onto the field, any given place, any given time, and just give a blessing.
And they'll pop right back up and be ready to go to the next event.
This is going to be a great opportunity to show the true power of the healing power of the priesthood.
That is, unfortunately, unless those athletes have the faith not to be healed, then that could be a problem, right?
Oh, yeah, it probably could.
All right, what number 7?
Gold medals for athletes will include lifetime food storage. Again, those family values, those Mormon values, they will probably give fabulous parting gifts of food storage to all of the athletes.
Yeah, giant tubs of wheat that will go bad because the second coming hasn't happened yet. It used to be big in the 70s and the 80s, and now the word food storage has almost been taken out of the lexicon of General Conference. They hardly mention it. In fact, right before COVID, when people actually would need their food storage, it was at an all-time low of only 2 mentions in the last couple of years. Oops, they probably ought to bring that back for the Olympics. Or how about number 8?
Rename the Olympic Village to Deseret Haven. Again, I can sort of see that happening too.
Now, if you use Deseret in the wrong context, you're going to get your butt sued by the church.
I was going to say that.
Owns the copyright to Deseret, Mormon, and a bunch of other things, but they might let, just on a temporary basis, people use Deseret Haven. I'm not sure about that, though.
I have a feeling, though, if they do that when the athletes are being interviewed, from around the world, they're going, I just love this Desert Haven. That's Deseret. We really appreciate Desert Haven. Deseret, right? Desert is a victory for Satan.
Yeah, it sure is. How about number 9?
New sport introduced competitive door-to-door knocking. Oh my gosh, I love that. Can you imagine? He was able to accomplish 3,000 knocks in 1 minute. Nobody answered, but he did knock.
3,000 people, only 3 people answered the door, and not one of them let him in. But we did give a Book of Mormon to Post Malone, so I'm sure that is going to be very, very fruitful in the future, right?
I can't even imagine how many celebrity encounters with athletes and presenting them with Book of Mormons is going to happen. With Mormonish did an episode on celebrity encounters with the Book of Mormon. We're going to have to do a part 2 because I'm sure it's going to happen.
How many athletes have gotten the Book of Mormon and then left it in the hotel room on accident? Oops, I wonder what. Yeah. Or how about number 10?
Ooh, Olympic gold medals replaced with medallions and CTR rings, or as the church likes to now call them, emblems of belonging.
That's what they call them. No,
you don't know this.
Serious.
Go Google this. All the little things that the kids receive now and the young adults, little necklaces and tie tacks and things, and they're called emblems of belonging. Google it right now. I'm never wrong.
Results of young men, youth rings, medallion gems, children youth rings. Yes. Emblems of belonging.
I know what I'm talking about. So I can see that. They'll have the stadium, the podium, and now presenting the emblems of belonging to our first place figure skating.
You can't give these to anybody for free. This is the church's official store here. You got to make a couple of bucks on the side, right?
You do.
Bishop Kaz knows that very well, that you can't pass up an opportunity to make a few extra bucks, stoke those coffers at Ensign Peak. And that does take us to our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week, the top 10 ways the church needs to get ready for the 2034 Olympics. For those of you out in the live chat, please cast your votes at this time. And Rebecca, I'd be very grateful if you'd be the first person to take our poll.
Yeah, I'm actually just going to vote for the one that I think is the most likely to happen. And I do think it's the Mormon Pioneer Trail. I think there's going to be some way that the torch and the trail are combined. on the international stage. So that's my vote.
I'm torn on my vote here since I made the poll myself. I do like number one, fire Brad Wilcox, or at least confine him to house arrest at a very, very minimum.
That's a given. I don't even think we need to vote on that. That's like a given.
Like, the most amazing thing is that when Brad Wilcox stepped in it in the Alpine Tri-State Fireside back in 2022, afterwards he was forced to apologize. And then what did they do? They promoted him after making one of the most racist, sexist, and homophobic speeches in recent memory. So somebody needs to do something about Brad Wilcox.
But what would we podcast about? Come on. Sometimes you got to let these things loose just for content.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that does take us to our final segment here, which is the Mormon News Roundup Joke of the Week. And Rebecca, I do believe that you have that for us.
I do have it. And I don't know if you've told this joke before. I know the past couple times I've been on, they've been a little sketchy. You know, I think one joke Landon told, you actually had to even cut out. I thought it was funny. So I picked a joke that's like a dad joke. Nobody can possibly complain. And it's possible you've had it before, but what is the name of Nephi's horse?
A taper or something? I don't know.
Or taper. I guess I should say, or elk or deer. We've heard those too.
Okay.
What is the name of whatever the heck it is that Nephi's riding? It's be unto you, because he's always saying, whoa, be unto you.
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. That's very, very nice.
I thought it was really good. I worked on that. Whoa. It kind of like sounds like when RFM does the Wilbur, right?
Very nice. Very nice. Now, over at the Mormonish Podcast and the Good Book Club, what are you guys working on? I know that you guys got hacked there with the secret combinations, the covenant people here. What happened with that? What are you working on? What can we expect to see over at the Mormonish Podcast?
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. We kind of learned about this group called the Cavalry. It's a group of apologists, names you would recognize, who are influencing and talking with missionaries and investigators in the field, maybe with or without the knowledge of mission presidents. You know, they'll do Zoom meetings with investigators and things like that. So we did a whole episode on that with RFM, and very quickly my Facebook was attacked and shut down. I finally just this morning got everything back up, and we were kind of warned ahead of time, you know, don't mess with this, something might happen. So it's kind of interesting if you want to look at that episode. It's been flagged. It can no longer be shared on Facebook because a lot of people are coming after it, but you can find it on our Mormonish podcast. We have an interesting episode coming up on Tuesday. I believe this episode is going to air Monday, but our episode is on Tuesday. And this is back to McKinney, but we're not talking about the temple anymore. As we know, the residents, the LDS residents, are totally on board with how tall, how light, how bright. Don't worry about traffic. It's going to be just fine. They're trying to build a mosque in McKinney, which is right there in Fairview. In this case, they're complaining about the height, the light, the size. It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. So we're going to dive into that in our episode on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Definitely going to be tuning in for that one. As far as the things that I'm working on, I run the Mormon movie reviews every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow, we're going to be reviewing that old classic, Baptists at Our Barbecue here.
I love
you
that.
Remember watching this one here,
Yep,
Rebecca?
love it, love it, love it. Yep.
This does have a lot of fun moments in it. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have a Mormon there's 252 Mormons and 252 Baptists in one town, and a Mormon moves in, and that changes the balance of power in that town, and all hell breaks loose. It is rather an amusing episode, to be sure. I want to thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming onto the Mormon News Roundup. I greatly appreciate that. I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma on Bandcamp.com for this episode's music. Always think celestial, and remember.
No unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
And remember.
Oh, you always do this to me. And how many times have I been on? No unhallowed hand will stop this podcast from moving on, rolling on, progressing. One of those.
No unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
See, I got it almost right. I've been on like 15 times? I swear.
Just one more time, please.
All right, ready?
Okay, well, you're going to see here. We're going to see here if anybody's coming in on the after show. This is D-Base here with the Mormon News Roundup. Anybody here want to come onto the show, talk about anything LDS related? I'll hang out here for a couple of minutes, see if anybody wants to come on, especially covering the items that we talked about on the show tonight. Happy to hang out with you. The link is in the description here. It's on StreamYard. If you join up, you will be able to be on the air. You will be able to be on the show. Hang out here for just a few minutes. If nobody comes on, That's no big deal, but I'm happy to hang out on the live show. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's nice to see you, Lee, Nick, Songs of Our Own. Thank you very much, Tim, Amy, Carrie. Nice to see you. Tessa Smith, Uprock Hunter, Nick Johnson, Tracy Aviary. Very nice. Harold White. Good to see you. Mark Crispin. Always nice to see you. Don C. Lee. Thanks a lot for being here. And anyone else that I might have missed, appreciate you being here. I want to thank Steve so much for giving the super chat. That was really great to see that, Steve. Thanks so much for the super chat and gifting the 5 memberships. I really appreciate that. You've done that in the past. I greatly appreciate that. It's very, very nice. Any takers out there for the after show? We are ready. I'm ready to take all takers, including haters. You can stump the chump and talk about anything that you want. Happy to hear from anyone at all. I guess I could I wonder how fast the stream will get taken down if I try to live stream the Olympics on here. I bet it'd be taken down in short order, but I can always try, I suppose. Anybody out there want to talk about anything Mormon related? That would be preferred. Let me see here. The link, Doug, the link is on the bottom of the screen. It's also, it's been on there for an hour, so I'm doing the best that I can on that. Let's see here. Can you actually stream the Olympics live? That's the question. I don't know if you can. Tim, it's on the bottom of the screen. It's in blue, and it's going across the bottom, and it's been there scrolling across for an hour and a half. But if nobody couldn't come on, then I'm going to leave the stream out. That's no big deal. I wonder how fast this stream will get taken down if we watch.
A tough ticket to score. Tom Cruise, Ariana Grande, Lady Gaga are all here. Chance to see the return of Simone Biles. Women's qualifying here at the Olympic Games in the United States.
Here they come.
On their way to the floor.
Okay. I can't hear you.
Some pretty impressive stuff there, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't even think about doing that. I was saying, I wonder how much those outfits that they wear cost.
I really don't know. I wonder if putting this Olympics on here might demonetize this entire episode, but I don't really care. I only make a few pennies off of this stuff anyway, so what do I care? Let's get caught up on the Olympics if you don't mind. Why not? Let's take a look and see what the highlights are. I'll catch up on it.
On the Summer Games, the U.S. racking up 5 medals after day 1 of competition. ABC's Maggie Rulli is covering the games for us. She's live in Paris with a beautiful backdrop, the Eiffel Tower. Maggie, good morning.
It is pretty beautiful, isn't it? We're just on day 2 of the Olympics. They're only just starting, but already we have seen some dramatic finishes and surprise celebrity appearances. And guys, Team USA is already bringing home the hardware.
This morning, Team USA starting off strong with 5 medals on day 1 coming from events in swimming, diving, and cycling, including Team USA's first gold, the men's 4x100-meter freestyle relay team beating out Australia and Italy, with Caleb Dressel pushing the team to victory in the final leg. We caught up with him before the big moment.
Knowing that my son got to watch me make an Olympic team, and he'll be in Paris, and he's not going to remember any of this, but that's not the point.
The women's team also going home with some medals. Katie Ledecky winning her first medal in what could be a record-breaking games for the swimmer, taking home the bronze in the 400-meter freestyle. First-time Olympians Cassidy Cook and Sarah Bacon taking silver in the women's 3-meter synchronized springboard event with their forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist dive. And 3-time gold medal defending champions, the U.S. women's water polo team, with a commanding first win over Greece, 15-6. In the stands, First Lady Jill Biden sporting an American flag sweater, and the team's new official hype man, Flavor Flav. The two seen hugging as they cheer on the team. We sat down with Flav before the game to hear about his new role as team sponsor.
When you say you're the official hype man for water polo, what does that mean?
I am going to be out there cheering them on, hyping them up. You know what I'm saying? I'm known to be the greatest hype man in America, the first, the original. And I said, let me take my expertise to the water polo team.
Now all eyes on gymnastics. Today, Team USA taking to the mat for the women's qualifying rounds. Simone Biles taking part in the all-around. And excitement building for basketball as both the men and women's teams get ready to take the court later today and tomorrow.
The biggest thing for me is just having my parents come and enjoy the moment with me.
And guys, there are 13 gold medals up for grabs today. Team USA is hoping to stay strong in the pool. They're looking for 3 more medals in swimming today as well.
I'm still hyped up after that interview with Flavor Flav. I love that. Maggie, do you want to switch to gymnastics though, because it's underway right now? What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, right now, guys, we are watching Simone Biles closely. She appears to be having some trouble with her leg in the qualification rounds. At one point, she's seen on camera saying she felt something in her calf. And when she returned to the mat, her leg was taped. Our team, who's watching this right now, is saying that she appears to be limping significantly. Guys, despite the fact she's walking gingerly, she was still able to complete her routine, which, by the way, is the hardest in the world. And her scores were so high, she's already secured a spot in the finals next week. You know, guys, though, whenever Simone takes the mat, it is must-watch Olympic television. We have been spotting so many celebrities in the stands. Snoop Dogg, Jessica Chastain, Ariana Grande, among many, many others, Tom Cruise, and yes, a large portion of our ABC team is there as well.
I mean, she's the one to watch, Simone Biles.
I know, some added drama now. We'll see.
All right. Thank you, Maggie Rulli, live from Paris.
That's some pretty interesting stuff there. Hey, welcome to the program. Doug, good to see you, Doug. How's it going?
Fine, man. You're probably getting sick of me, aren't you?
That's all good. Nothing good. It's good to see you. And Peter from Down Under, how's it going? You watching the Olympics here?
Hey, g'day guys. Just in the shed working on my sweetheart.
Yeah, are you watching the Olympics here?
I'm listening to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm having a few issues here with my computer as far as getting things queued up here. We'll watch one more highlight here, 1 or 2 more highlights, just for the heck of it. It's probably going to get me demonetized, but I don't really care, so it's not that big of a deal. We already got 5 membership options anyway from this last one, so let's see a couple.
To a terrorist attack.
Well, I certainly hope not. I definitely hope that we don't see something like that. Let's hope that the security on this is good, and I definitely wouldn't want to see that. I am going to shut the stream down. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I know you guys didn't get much time, but we kind of ran out of time. I've got some other things I got to get going, so I appreciate that.
Not
you
a
guys
problem.
can come back tomorrow night. Appreciate everybody coming on. Thanks for hanging out with us. And go USA.
Right.
No offense, Peter.
I'm busy. I'm busy as well.
Okay, see ya.